Hi, Terron.
Hey, hey,
How's your day been?
it's been pretty cool. I've just been chilling at home. I maybe left the house a
Mm.
couple times to go to the store, but haven't really done much. Did a bit of
Well,
reading.
that's how lazy Sundays should be.
Oh,
Have you been
definitely.
listening to any streams?
Have I listened to any streams? I've listened to a couple podcasts today. I did a bit of reading. Um, Edited some things for my own YouTube channel. But no, I've been listening to any live streams. Are there any that you recommend or that maybe I missed with that were pretty interesting?
Um, well, the last one I heard, but I'm afraid I fell asleep during it, was the one with Alexander Dugin in a space. But
Oh
that's
yeah, I was listening to that
recorded.
too.
Oh, you did? Oh, good.
Yeah, I listened to maybe for about 30 minutes, 45 minutes. It was more so background noise. I was listening to some things, but yeah, it was more so background noise as I was doing some chores.
Yeah, I mean, I know he doesn't really speak that clearly in a way that, non-academics can understand.
Mm.
If you know what I mean. I mean, there was a time when, uh, okay, when Pope Benedict was alive and he would make speeches, I tried to listen to what he was saying, but it just nothing he said got through because I would just, lose interest because of the way he was pronouncing his words and his intonation and whatever. I mean, I guess he wouldn't have been saying anything particularly important, but
You know,
um,
who I was thinking of Abdul Hakim Murad um, just a bit ago, and about how he kind of has that same effect on me when I listen to him. Like I can kind of make out what he's saying, but he uses such a vocabulary that some of it can go over your head sometimes.
have you read his book? There was he published a book a few years ago. I can't remember the title, but I think sadly for so many of these intellectuals, they don't want to be understood, because being understood would mean them getting into trouble, and that's why they wrap their ideas up in so many words, and really nobody knows what the hell they're talking about.
It's like, man, talk to me like you would talk to your grandmother. I know you wouldn't be using all this high level academic jargon speaking to her. I mean, maybe they would. I don't know, but I definitely believe that when you're in such a position to where you can inform people, you should think about speaking in a way that the most basic person or the most basic
That is
understanding could comprehend.
intelligible.
Yeah, yeah, basically.
But they just want to keep their jobs. I mean, if you look at all these philosophers like Hegel and, you know, um, Kant, it is as if they don't really want to be understood because they didn't want to get cancelled.
Mm.
And that's why, you know, they don't really speak clearly.
I saw
While,
that you shared something about
compared to Chinese political philosophers, it's like they really want to be understood.
mm, I haven't really looked into too many
Yeah, sorry.
Chinese political
What were you
philosophers.
saying?
I was saying I saw that you posted something from Five Pillars. He interviewed Nick Griffin. Um, did you
Yes.
have a chance to watch that?
Yes, I did. I don't remember Nick Griffin saying anything constructive. I did watch all 2 hours of it.
Who is Nick Griffin anyway?
You don't know who he is. Well,
No,
he
I
was
don't.
the leader of the British National Party.
Oh, did you know him personally?
Well, yes, I met him a few times, and I was a member.
Okay, yeah, I remember. I know that you were a member. I just don't know how close you were to some of these people who I'm coming to find out were a part of that party as well.
Hmm.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like an interesting conversation because of what Five Pillars represents and what I understand Nick Griffin represents. I wonder how the conversation turned out because
Well, it was pretty non-committal. I mean, I did watch it. I just have no memory. I mean, so nothing stood out because there was nothing concrete that was being proposed.
mm,
Um,
I mean,
but
they
but
both
then
seem to be
that's
on opposite ends of the aisle when it comes to how they view British society, from what I understand.
sorry. Who views? Sorry, could you start your sentence again? I didn't hear it.
Yeah, they seem to be on opposite ends of the aisle when it comes to how they view British society at the moment.
Oh, you mean Nick Griffin and his
And
supporters?
and
Well, I
or
mean,
Dilly
being
and
Islamophobes.
yeah, and the person who who the interviewer being a Muslim, and probably being on the more far right conservative side of that religion. Yeah, they just seem to be just diametrically opposed to each other ideologically, and in how they view each other in British society. So I just wonder how that conversation kind of worked out. I'm gonna, once I have some time later, I'm gonna check it out myself. But it
Oh,
just seems like
good.
an interesting combination to sit down for a discussion.
Yes, please let me know what you think. I do remember that Nick Griffin said that he was better treated by the Muslims than the bastard broadcasting corporation. So
What
that
corporation?
the BBC
Okay, yeah, yeah.
or the bitch broadcasting corporation,
What is
one
his
of the
background? Is he
eyes.
middle class? He's upper middle class. Come from a working class background.
His father was an MP. His father was a Conservative MP, Edgar Griffin,
Okay, so
and
he's so he's not like some Tommy Robinson
well,
figure.
he managed to get a law degree from Cambridge.
Okay, then what are his politics then? What is he anti-immigrant immigration to the UK? You know,
Yeah, yeah. I mean that's basically the BNP.
oh, so that's like one of their like fun. I don't want to say fundamental principles, but that's one of the things that the BNP believes in, huh? Anti-immigration.
Yeah, to the extent of paying people to get back
How
to home.
how did they accept you? I mean, you know,
Yeah, I was invited to join. It wasn't like I was applying to join. They invited me to join, but that was because the Human Rights Equality and Human Rights Commission was having a go at the party, saying you you haven't got any non-whites. How about getting some? Because it was just so ridiculous anyway. You
mm.
know, and they thought, oh, we know Claire, she seems all right. She's not gonna, we know what her views are, and they are broadly in sympathy
So
with
you weren't
ours.
thinking about the BNP before they invited you. Were you
No, I
dabbling
mean,
in some of their literature, watching some of their talks, or following them to a certain extent, or did it come out of nowhere? Them sending you an invitation or
it didn't
inquiring.
really come out of nowhere in the sense that, we would attend the same meetings and go to the same dinner parties, and people would know that, what my political views were. And when they had to have some non-white join, I seemed to be the obvious one to choose.
Did you already have the views that you had? I mean, did being with that group shape your views any more than what they were before you joined, or was it like just a perfect fit as far as the ideology you held and what they were espousing?
Well, these meetings and dinner parties we had were basically what you call Eurosceptic. So there would be UKIP, and of course, there would be, I mean, UKIP and BNP were kind of, you know, similar. I mean, what divides them would be, class.
Okay.
And as for why I joined, I mean, I guess I just wanted to know what the problem was. It's sort of, well, we live in a democracy. If most people are complaining about immigration, the least they can do is um, vote to control their own borders. Being a member of the EU means you don't get to control your borders. So it would make sense to vote to leave the EU. And therefore, leaving the EU was, an expression of, well, wanting to control immigration.
And
Does
has
that
it
make sense
controlled
to you?
immigration? Yeah, yeah, yeah. Has leaving the EU controlled immigration?
It hasn't, because whoever is in charge is going to keep bringing them in. You
Speaking of,
know, people thought, okay, yes, if they really, followed, you know, what would happen, it's like, yeah, because the whole idea of being in the EU is that you can't control, because it's open borders. Everybody in all the member states in the EU have to
right.
agree to open borders,
And it
and
seems like
therefore,
it's
if
it's
you,
only a couple European, not a couple, but a collection of European countries that all of Europe is crowding into.
I'm sorry,
It
I,
seems like it's only a collection or certain European countries that all of Europe or the EU are crowding into. I don't see a whole bunch of people migrating to Greece or Italy.
oh
You
right, oh yeah, follow the money,
Yeah,
basically.
I see, like when I was working at the Midland Hotel, tons of Spanish. I mean, just working in Manchester in general, I've worked around tons of Spanish people, tons of Italians, tons of Greeks, Eastern Europeans, of course. Um, and I'm pretty sure you don't see that amount of people going to, like I mentioned already, countries like Italy or, Greece or because of what's going on in those countries. So yeah, I can kind of see, understood British frustration, and of course, my immigration from the MENA countries. So I actually understood British frustrations when they wanted to leave the EU to have like their own autonomy, and control what was going on with their borders and economically, from what I understood. Um, but it just seems like none of that actually happened. Things kind of
Yeah,
got
because they
worse.
don't care. It doesn't matter. It's like, oh, we're out of the EU, then we'll let the honkies come in. They don't care. So, people are just beginning to realize that, whatever you do, the government doesn't care. They want more immigration.
Hmm.
And they're coming in. And all this shit about, oh, we're going to send them to Rwanda. And then you get the judiciary saying, oh, but we can't. It's their human rights. So
Right, I heard a
obviously
critique about
somebody,
that was so spot on. That just sounds so stupid. Send who to? I mean, are these people Rwandan? I mean, you're just gonna just round up immigrants, no matter their ethnic background, and send them to that place in Africa? I mean, what's the idea behind that? Is that just talk? I mean, or is there something really behind that?
it's just they sort of pretend talking tough about immigration. And then
Mm,
when the crunch comes, they can't do it. And, you know, I mean, really, the only way to understand the situation is that all of Europe, all the NATO countries are US vassal states.
mm,
And, America goes around bombing the crap out of Muslim countries. And then these Muslims would come to the West as cheap labor. It's a great business model.
right,
Great business model. And it's like, and you get all this sort of slave cheap labor.
right.
And,
I
and you
mean,
don't have to you don't have to try and get the locals to work harder or have more babies or parent them better or educate them better. You just make them go gay, make them become transgender, and then the problem will die with them. And then they'll just suck in more, immigrants from other countries
yeah, I wonder
until
how
they
the
can
country.
get their AI together.
What do you mean AI?
I think the idea is that eventually, we'll have driverless cars and driverless trains and everything will.
Then you won't need all the menial jobs will be taken over by artificial intelligence, and you wouldn't need immigrants anymore. Well, that would put a
Yeah,
lot of, but then these immigrants won't, if they're out of the job, they won't go home. Well, they're home. They're in the
turn
UK.
them gay and transgender, and then the problem will die with them. It's basically the West sucks in all these people from outside the West and grinds them up. It's like, yeah, we're going to use you up. Your DNA is going to merge with this, degenerate crap, and then you'll just die. And this is part of the whole environmental, ideal of reducing the population.
Mm.
They're probably even, trying to start an artificial famine to reduce the numbers. Because I mean, we sort of know that the farmers are complaining, but nobody cares. There are protests, but they're not reported.
Right.
And then
Yeah.
when there's a famine, it's like, yeah, the useless eaters will just die. Who cares about them?
Yeah, I wonder what the UK is going to look like in the next 50 years. And in a sense, I feel like it's the whole immigration topic is an exaggeration. I mean, when you're living within the major cities, okay, you can feel it, you can see it, you experience it. But when you leave like Manchester, Birmingham, London, things are still pretty lily white, if you ask me, and very English. It's not like I'm running into a whole bunch of Greeks and Spanish people uh, in Chester or something like that. They're typically all English people. And when you look at the stats, it's still like what 85% English in this country or white in this country. I mean, I don't know if they consider the other European immigrants as a part of that white population here, but the numbers are still fairly high. I would only say that in the major cities, do you see multiculturalism really at play? And then a lot of what you're saying is still true about how the immigrants are coming in, working menial jobs, just enough to get by, really kind of just creating a slave class of people. um yeah, I don't know. I really can't put my finger on it on what's exactly going on at play, because on one hand I hear the complaints and I hear the arguments from people who are anti-immigration, but I still see the UK is a pretty English country. The immigrants really don't have too much of and there really isn't too much upward mobility for non-English people. And then especially there's a class factor as well. So there isn't too much upward mobility for a good number of English people as well, depending on, their own background. So I don't know. It's complicated. It's complicated.
Well, I
Uh,
mean, the thing is that there is no particular system. It's like even the ruling classes, they don't care about each other. You would have thought that they would, you know, try and look after each other, but they don't, because you see, the whole idea of capitalism is that you need a middle class, you need a strong middle class to keep the hounds of communism away from your
who is the
door.
middle class here in the UK? Because I feel like, I don't know, maybe it's because where I stay at, I just feel like it's, you know, everybody more or less does the same thing, or generally makes the same amount of money, granted maybe 10 to 20K, which 10 to 20K a year more is a significant difference. But I don't know, I just don't see no difference in the living standard. I'm curious where the middle class, is at, or what do they do? Who do they make up?
But I suppose, the classes are divided between what the professionals and the working classes, you know,
And are
I don't
these
know. I
lines
mean,
becoming
and
more
I guess they'd
blurred?
be divided by neighborhoods.
Are these lines becoming more blurred, like, as well? Because I've been told that the neighborhood I stay in, like 20 years ago, was really bad, but now they're doing a lot of building. I'm close to the university. We have new uh, homes or townhomes just right around the corner, which the rent is extremely expensive compared to uh, just somewhere just right up the street, not too far from it. So I wonder, are these people still divided? Are these classes really still divided by neighborhoods um, and other stuff like that? I've
Well,
never
I
really
guess,
understood
yeah,
this aspect
I
of being
guess
divided.
yes, because, if living costs is the most expensive, takes out most of your income, then, you would um, you'd be categorized um, by your economic status, which is, to do with your class, right?
Mm.
I mean, it's sort of, I mean, they even have this expression, chav, council house and violent. You live in a tower block, you live in a,
Yeah, see,
and
I
then,
never, I
then I
don't.
guess, you might own your own home, you're not council house, and then
But
you
then you
live
can
in,
own some of these council homes though, can't or houses, can't you? Like, or that, like your neighbor could be, you like, for instance, where I stay, you could buy this out, but I mean, I'm not counsel, I don't think, but yeah, I mean, I don't know about all of this stuff. Like we call them the projects, where I'm from, and you know what those look like. and where those are at. But here it's
By
like,
the architecture, you mean?
yeah, by the architecture. But here it's like I'm starting to get a understanding of, okay, council homes. This is what they look like. Supposed to be bad, but I don't know. I guess because things are changing in Manchester, and then
Yeah,
also
they
I
make
keep
it very confusing. I mean, there's housing association, which is a kind of, low rent but high security kind of, place.
because they say there's council homes out in a part of Manchester called Withenshaw, but Withenshaw is like really nice. Because I used to work at Scott Precision, a wire factory that was out in Withenshaw, and yeah, it's pretty much mostly white. And they say that there's a council estate there that's pretty bad, but yeah, yeah, it is pretty confusing. And then
And
also me,
deliberately confusing. I mean, they want to mix people up because I think what they do is when you have some um, luxury flats, the people, sorry, the builders have to make sure they build some, you know, accommodation for, the low rent people. So that's been, policy for quite a while.
mm,
And I know that there's been a problem like, oh, you've got to put them in the same building or something, and it's like, oh, but they have to have a separate entrance because we don't want to look at them. You know, I mean, the rich people don't want to look at the poor people who also live in their same building, and there will be all kinds of ways to, you know, to divide them, to separate them from other people. Um, I mean, the British have these things such as, the tradesman's entrance,
mm.
with the staff servicing the rich people living in a building, have to go through. They can't go through the main entrance.
Yeah, that's what they were telling us at the Midland. That the employees cannot go through the. They were real big on that. I mean, it might be a little bit different than what you're talking about because you just work there versus where you live. But yeah, they kind of tried to uphold that standard that, oh no, as an employee, walk through the go through the side door, the staff entrance, not the main entrance. Um, Surprisingly, I was working in the Midland when the conservative conference was going on, so I had a chance to talk to a few gentlemen or a few conservatives who attended. Some very interesting people I met. I also had a chance to see Rishi Sunak like
Oh
several times.
yes.
Yeah, I was surprised to find he's not that big. He's not that tall. He has to be like maybe 5'5", 5'6". Um, can't be. He doesn't have too much weight on him either. I was surprised. When I see him on camera, I'm thinking like he might be like 6'2" or something like that. But when I seen him walking with his entourage or his security personnel, whatever, yeah, he wasn't that big, man. He was like my size. So I might even have a little bit more weight on me than he does. But yeah,
Oh,
there's
did you actually speak to him, or you just saw him?
Nah, I was there on the day when my department had a chance to take pictures with him. I was sick. I called out sick that day because I had a terrible cold. And so I could have I don't know any of the people's names who I know them by their first name because they introduced me, but sat down and talked to a lot of people because where they had me stationed, I was basically like at the entrance greeting people, and asking if they needed help with anything or whatever. And yeah, I had a chance to, because nobody really needed help with anything. I was just standing around some conservatives or people who attended the conference where I was at, and yeah, I would just have like normal conversations with them. They seemed to be well to do because one dude was saying like, "Oh yeah, I got a house out in Lancaster or someplace near Manchester," and then but he also lives in London, or he also has a house in London. He was a chill dude. You know, they were asking me questions like, "How do I like it here?" and stuff like that. I was telling them like, things have gotten fairly more expensive over the last like 5 years since I've been here. Like prices at the shops have increased damn near double. But I told them it's still not a bad place to live. They were expecting I think they were expecting to hear like negative things, but I was like, no, no, the UK is cool. It needs a bit of shaping up, no doubt, but still not a bad place to be from my perspective. And they were, yeah, they were pretty chill, man.
Mhm.
But I guess 'cause I was just talking to him like regular people. I didn't involve like no politics. I don't even really know too much about UK politics like that. So, all of the questions and things I was asking and same things that they were asking were really just like, I don't want to say personal things, but just really had nothing to do with politics. Just more so, oh yeah, I'm from California. Like, oh, okay, I've been to the United States and the usual things. That's actually something I'm starting to hate. Like every time I open my mouth or I meet somebody, I have to give them the same story. Like especially working at the hotel, I used to have to tell the story, like, I swear to God, 10 times a day. Like, what are you doing out here in the UK? And it's like, damn, man, not again. So it's just so a lot of times I would try to keep my mouth closed. I would just try to help people, uh,
Mhm.
and say as little as possible. So I don't have to hear, oh, uh, where are you from? I'm like, damn, man. I'm
You
like,
just have to adopt a Mancunian accent. Can
man, I
can you
don't
do one? Can you do one? Can you talk like a Mancunian?
I can if I'm like making fun of my wife and children, you know, because they say something to me, I'll respond like it sound exact, but I can't do it like on the drop of a dime, just at will
Mhm.
like that. So no, but I kind of get how Brits talk, not too hard on the R's. Um, uh, I would just have to make fun of somebody and then I can do it. But just off the top of my head, I'm not that good. And I had my
Yeah.
sociology teacher was from
Yeah.
Manchester, and he was telling me like people would
Mhm.
always ask him, and a few people have asked me this as well, like, "Oh, you still have your accent?" And it's like, man, I can never forget that I have it dealing with y'all, dealing with you people, because every time I talk, you constantly reminding me that when, to be honest, when I hear the British accent, it doesn't have the same effect like when I first got here 5 years ago, where I had a hard time understanding, especially up north, where the English accent isn't as clear as I would say the
Oh,
London
it's
accent.
terrible. I mean, the one, I mean, the Geordie accent is the worst. I mean, I actually thought that, the one I was talking to was a retard, and then it turned out that, he's just a Geordie.
Oh my God,
Um,
man! It's
but there was this woman from X Factor, and she was from the Black Country, and she had to go to America to, I don't know, do whatever, and the Americans couldn't understand her, but she sang quite well, but she didn't get it because the Americans didn't understand her.
yeah, I I don't want to hear anything about Ebonics from English people, actually from nobody, because everybody have their own ways of speaking. I mean, up here, I don't know if it's the Bolton way of speaking or if it's just Northern, but instead of saying something, people will say summit. You know what I'm saying? Like, uh, go they would just replace something, they would say summit, like, can you go get
Yeah,
me
yeah.
or there's summit in the refrigerator for you. And it's like, that just, I don't know, man, it's like, okay, but
Yeah, but I mean, the thing is that the white people would make fun of each other. It's not just you with
no, and
your
I know
American
they all
accent.
make fun of each other's accents. People from Liverpool get it the worst here in
Mm.
Manchester. Every time somebody's from Liverpool and I'm around them, somebody from Manchester always pointing it out. Like, don't you notice his accent and stuff like that? And
Yes, join us in making fun of him.
no, because then they turn around and do it to you. I've had to check a few people like doing that to me when they find out that I'm American, because then they want to talk in a certain vernacular,
Hmm.
what they think is a Black American vernacular, and it's usually always some like East Coast uh kind of way of speaking, like, yo dog, what's up? And it's like, we don't talk like that on the West Coast, for one. And I had to tell some guy, like, bro, don't talk to me like that. Like, I don't even talk like that. And then you're just like,
Mm-hmm.
you're basically talking to me like I'm based on certain stereotypes that you have, and I'm like, I'm an adult anyway. It's like, dude, don't come at me like that. Like, I'm a grown ass man. Don't talk to me like you got some sense, not no. And then maybe once I get to know you, we can joke around, and then you make fun of
Hmm.
me in that kind of vernacular. I might make fun of you in some type of, like, I tell you I do my wife and my kids sometimes. So
Hmm.
but yeah, I get that a lot too, where people kind of like, oh, because I say man, when I speak, just when I normally speak, like, oh
Yeah,
man,
lots of English people say that now. I mean,
man.
they pick up a lot of Americanisms without even
Yeah, not
realizing it.
not so much up here do I hear. And then when people say it, it just sounds horrible in an English accent. Because I've heard people try to mock me or like, man, man. it's like, oh man, now you guys sound. I at least I like to
They
believe
got
I
it from
sound.
Joe Biden.
Huh?
They got it from Joe Biden, didn't they? I mean, doesn't he say things like that? He says that, doesn't he?
I don't know. I don't listen to Joe Biden. So
Okay.
whatever I just always hear about how he's
Come on,
basically on his
man.
last leg.
Come
Yeah,
on, man.
yeah, like
That's
Bart
what he
Simpson.
says.
Like just like I'm pretty sure Brits have watched The Simpsons. That's kind of like how Bart talk. That's how a lot of us on the West Coast we speak. So
Mm.
yeah, and then and motherfucker too. Excuse my language, but that I think that Brits aren't really. That's not a word that Brits use, and I can tell. Like that's just not in their vocabulary, and it came by way of uh, America or watching Hollywood, seeing what's going on in the states and how we talk, because they some of them laugh in the way that I use it because like any and everything is an mf'er. You know what I'm saying? Like you can
Yeah.
call the door a mf'er, you can call a person a mf'er. Real is some people
You
have found it my
motherfucking motherfucker.
real everything can be an mf'er. The way Americans use it, and when Brits kind of trip out on that when they hear me use it or something like that, or I'll talk using expressing myself like that.
I mean, I know a very prim and proper woman, and she says it. She says it too, and I think, what? What did you just say?
Uh,
Oh,
yeah, but Brits have their own kind of, and the hardest thing
they
to
have
that
no
I have,
culture. They celebrate Halloween now, and I
but it's
remember
so
years
weak
ago
though.
they
I
say
feel sorry. I know I see it, but I feel so. I don't know how it is down south, but up here it's so
they
depressing.
celebrate it because the supermarkets offer it. That's
Yeah,
why
but
they have to
nobody,
celebrate it.
the kids are just walking around with nobody really giving out candy. Like I swear it has to be like every sixth or seventh door may have something for them, but nobody, it's not like the States. The States really, when it comes to the holiday seasons, man, I don't the States does it better than the UK. I don't know how they do it elsewhere, but you guys don't have no Thanksgiving out here. So you really don't have a holiday season. You have a huge break. I guess you have Guy Fawkes Day or whatever, but I've heard that has like really died down um recently. Like nobody really celebrates that besides just popping fireworks, which is still cool. I think Guy Fawkes, if however you say his name, could be something equivalent to like a Thanksgiving-ish July 4th type of event that the Brits could turn it into. But yeah,
Yeah, and I suppose you
Halloween
could say it's anti-Catholic.
is anti-Catholic.
Well, Guy Fawkes was Catholic, and there was this Catholic plot to blow up Parliament. And for a while there was this sort of fighting between English people who wanted to stay Catholic and English people who were happy to, be Anglican.
Yeah, we don't have to,
During the English Reformation,
yeah. See, I didn't know
after
the history
Henry
behind that.
VIII broke from Rome and had to
I
send
first found
religion.
out about this holiday when I was watching V for Vendetta. Uh, Maybe you
Hmm.
haven't seen it, but it's with Natalie Portman. Um,
Hmm.
yeah, it takes place in England. And actually, like a kind of like a COVID event happened. Takes place in a post COVID like situation, but
Hmm.
in the movie, the virus that was unleashed on the British population was 10 times worse than COVID. It was killing people. And so it was basically the aftermath of that. And so the guy in the video blew up Parliament on the what is it, the 5th of November. And
Hmm.
so yeah, that's how I first found out about it. And here they pop fireworks. I actually have a few recordings on my phone of when I was walking home on that night, and some people at the park were letting some fireworks off. Stupid people, man. They had it cocked in the dirt the wrong way, and the thing just basically launched at them and their kids. Uh, Fortunately, it was like a small kind of like firecracker launcher thing or whatever. I don't know what you guys call it, but it could have been bad. But yeah,
Hmm.
so the holiday season out here isn't all that great, man. I'm sorry, like Christmas isn't all that. I think Americans just kind of do it a little bit better. I really wish Halloween was something because I see the kids like they really want to celebrate Halloween. My kids always ask me about Halloween, but my wife, she's like, Muslims don't really do that. So
Oh, I'm glad your wife is firm about it. Is she?
no, no, yeah, my wife is firm. I'm probably a little bit more relaxed or lackadaisical when it comes to religion, practice, the non-Muslim holidays. I'm not really too concerned because I feel like they don't have like the intention isn't really there as far as the religious symbolism is or what it's supposed to represent for a certain religion. But I'm more so like, man, let the kids have fun, man. They have to go to school with these people and see it. All right, we can put a huge
But
emphasis
it's
on,
devil worship and idolatry. I
man.
guess
You know,
that's an objection to
and see
it,
what's
right?
crazy is that I'm looking at my wife has no problem buying them Halloween and Christmas things out of season. Like my kids wear stuff with Santa Claus on. Like they have night outfits or ones or whatever you want to call it that they sleep in or that they wear in the house that have Santa Claus, reindeer, Christmas trees all on it. It's like she doesn't care because that clothes when she buy it out of season is extremely cheap. You know what I'm saying?
Hmm.
And then she
Hmm.
has no problem with them dressing up as you know, my daughters have a lot of outfits. They have a basket full of different outfits that they like to wear, like a witch outfit. Well, that's what I wanted to bring up. But they also have a mermaid outfit, a Harry Potter outfit, and some other stuff I can't think off the top of my head. But my amongst those outfits, they had my wife bought them like a orange dress with a pumpkin face on it and a witch hat that goes with it. So she's not really too bothered with the symbolism or anything like that, it seems like, but she's just more like on those days we shouldn't practice, we shouldn't give any legitimacy to you know what's going on those days. You know, it's not for us to celebrate or give the impression that we're celebrating.
Hmm. Well,
But
I tend to, yes, agree. Um,
you tend to agree or disagree, what'd you
well,
say?
I don't know. The thing is, okay, I'm not Muslim, but I suppose if you're going to have a religion, you should take it seriously, or at least say why you shouldn't be doing it, even as you do it, kind of thing.
Mm.
You know. Um. So yeah, or just have a discussion about it. Because I guess ultimately it's the principle of the thing. Um. And I guess when English people were complaining about why can't we say Happy Christmas to each other, um, you know, but then I remembered that Happy Holidays is an American expression because in America there is no official religion, and therefore you might be wishing a Jew a happy Christmas, and then you might be upset. So you say Happy Holidays. Isn't that the reason?
I didn't grow up thinking about it. I grew up around Jews. They never made a fuss, but they were probably secular. They were mostly non-religious Jewish people. So you know, I do, and I remember hearing some. They tried that in California for a bit. Like, okay, you can't. You know, they did take out. We did stop the Pledge of Allegiance because you know, one nation under God type business. And but I don't ever remember like, no, you can't tell somebody Merry Christmas. You have to say Happy Holidays. I wouldn't use them interchangeably though. Like I would say Merry Christmas on Christmas. Um, but I don't remember I don't remember people even using saying Merry Christmas outside of like Christmas Day. You know, they might say
Hmm.
Have a good
Hmm.
Christmas, you know.
Hmm.
I hope you have safe holiday. You know, I hope you stay safe over the holidays. Um, and they usually mean like you know, Christmas and New Year's if they're not going to see you again. But I don't remember like December 15th somebody just saying, "Oh, Merry Christmas, see you later."
Okay, okay. No,
You
because
know,
sometimes, like they talk about the winter festival, and the people say, "Oh, but it's Christmas. Why can't we say that?" And I
and
guess that.
I think you also listen to a lot of like people who are invested or have you know I'm still like a black American, so a lot of the things I indulge in my like my personal free time, like are things, you know, probably most black Americans would understand. And we don't have these kind of in black American discourse, these type of things don't really pop up.
Hmm.
You
Hmm.
know, like, oh, you shouldn't tell Mary. I don't think black person even thinking about, if they should say, how somebody would feel, how a Jew would feel, and it's out of ignorance. But I don't, I really, this type of stuff really don't pop up. It's because atheism is so prevalent
Black
amongst,
people don't fight over words. I'm sure some of them do. I mean, yeah,
not
but
over, not over
this
Merry
thing that
Christmas,
always sort of puzzles
not
me
over
about white
Merry
people.
Christmas, not over
Okay,
if people say
maybe not
Happy
about, but
Holidays or Merry, like, oh, don't say that to me. I'm an atheist, or I'm a Hebrew Israelite. Don't tell me Merry Christmas. I don't.
wish me a happy Hanukkah or
Yeah, what are
something.
you saying, pagan? So now,
Mm,
okay, you'll get black Muslims who are like that, who like don't tell me. And I think that's fairly new with the introduction of Salafism, because before I don't know if the NOI made a big fuss about it, and even when the founder's son took over the movement and turned it into more of a Sunni organization, he still, uh, I want to say, encourage them to celebrate these holidays, just the spirit of it, not the theological implications or impending, aspects. I want to say it's more of like new Muslim phenomenon where they're anti um, these holidays and spending time with their family on them, or recognizing them, or giving them any legitimacy. Because I remember within my community, or in the Black Muslim community, actually that guy Lukman Ahmed, who we both interviewed, has written extensively about
mm,
how Muslims need to stop with having these extreme views on how to go about the holidays with their family. So from that, I can tell that it was something very new to the African American community. Having these like, oh, we shouldn't practice these holidays; they're pagan holidays. We only have two Eids and whoop de woo. So yeah, it's not prevalent in the general Black American discourse. But yeah, we fight over words, of course. Like, there's certain things that you don't say within Black, and certain terms that you don't use. Within a that could be the insiders don't use, and that aren't accepted by outsiders. I think most people are like that, you know,
mm.
or everybody's like that.
This expression African American, when did that come in? Because there was a time when black people in America called each other black, right? Or
Yeah,
not?
Negro, and like, yeah, Negro was acceptable. I don't know. I think this is just really trying. I really can. Smokey Robinson wrote a poem about it that you can find on YouTube, called Black American, and I thought it's a really good poem, and it encapsulates how I feel about being a Black American and
Mm.
stuff. But yeah, it's
Oh,
just
maybe I can
always.
find the poem and read it because I think people would be interested because
No, you
it's
can
like
listen to it.
white
He
people.
says it on Def Comedy poetry. Um Def Jam Records, they used to have like a poetry night. I think it was like for an hour. They would have maybe like five, numerous guests on within that hour saying poetry. Sometimes they would have like really famous people saying, but then most of the time it was just poets. It came on a Showtime late at night. So you can find the clip of him reciting this poem on YouTube. It's called Black American. I think he went up there twice, and Black American might be, I don't, but both of them are really good. The one titled Black American, yeah, I think that's the one that I really like. That and he goes over like the evolution of the names that Black Americans have, in a very poetic way, not in detail, but kind of makes a mockery of the fact, like, yeah, we were Negroes, we were this, we were that, and basically saying I'd much rather be called black. He didn't make it rhyme like that, but he basically, was saying like, yeah, black is the term that I much prefer, and I do, as a Black American, I
Yeah, yeah,
much prefer.
but it drives me crazy that term, and it's not because I don't like black people or anything. It's like African American. So basically, can you be an if you can be an African American, can you be an African Asian or an African European? You know, or an
Yeah, I don't.
African.
Most Black
It's
Americans don't like
just
that term.
dead.
Most Black Americans don't really like that term. I much prefer Black American. Smokey Robinson just said much prefer, and it's on a lot of it's on the premise, like, man, we don't have really no attachment to Africa like that. Like, props to our ancestors. Most Black Americans definitely recognize that their ancestry comes from Africa. Some go even further than that, try to find out and really try to adopt the culture in some ways, but most Black Americans, man, are comfortable being American, and really don't identify as African like that. And if they do, it's just they don't really think about it like that. But most Black Americans who are aware, of the terms. They much prefer to be called Black Americans because of what you said. You don't see none of my white friends used to say I'm European American, I'm Portuguese American. Many times when their parents were born in Portugal, you know what I'm saying, and their first generation having been born in the United States, and they never identified as Portuguese American, Italian American. You know what I'm saying? They, maybe that was prevalent on the East Coast, but at least the people I grew up whose parents really or grandparents came from Europe, they didn't identify as such. And I always thought like it's stupid. And really, I think that they should, uh, because
Mm.
there are like I don't know. A lot of these people weren't considered white when they first came to the United States. Like when Polish people really were starting to migrate here, Italians, Irish, they weren't. I mean, and you can find books. There's literature out there that those aren't the Europeans that they wanted migrating to the United States at first. You
Yeah,
know, they
because the white people were pretty horrible to each other, right? Because I mean, actually, there is this sort of new strain of white person in America that doesn't exist in Europe, such as these Irish Germans,
yeah, they're all
because
mixed up in
because the Catholic and the Anglos would marry them,
mm.
because they were the wrong religion, and so the Irish just had to make do with each other to marry anyone who's Catholic, and I remember Mad Magazine, and there was this joke about Poles and how stupid they were, and I thought that's really mean, but there was this very rude Mad Magazine joke about Poles. I remember.
Yeah, I mean, I used to hear from my Italian friend all the time. Like his grandmother, he used to say like his grandmother experienced a level of racism equal to African Americans when she first moved here from Italy. You know, and I've heard that from a lot of Europeans that hey man, when my people got here, we didn't have it the best. We had to struggle and suffer, but there was just something about the United States where they were able to assimilate like these massive amounts of white people from different parts of Europe into just buying into white identity. I mean, I told you the background, or maybe you don't remember, but I'm pretty sure I told you the background of my ex-wife on her father's side. Her father, her grandfather moved to the United States from the Kingdom of Bohemia. You know what I'm saying? And then fast forward, uh, his grandson, or my ex-wife's father, he's a cowboy in North Dakota. You know what I'm saying? And so yeah, it really wasn't all that how just that level of assimilating into the United States, you really don't even see that in Europe. With and to be honest, I mean, I don't know, United States is pretty unique in the fact that they've had, and I mentioned this the other day, that they've had a lot of people from different places buying into what they call the American dream, the land of
Mhm,
opportunity.
mhm.
And you really have different people coming from different places who at a fast pace feel like they're American, like they have a share in what goes on in the States, and whatnot, that you really don't see in Europe. So to
Mm.
where over a period of time, like I've talked to Polish people who were born here, grew up here, sometimes their parents, but they still feel very Polish. I still talk to Italian, I mentioned this yesterday, but I just come across a lot of people who don't feel like who, even if they were born here, their parents might have been born and raised here. They're from a minority background, and they just feel like they don't have no share in British society. Like this isn't really their country in a sense.
I think the reason was this was something Maheen and I discussed, and I listened to my interview with him, and he was talking about the difference between American Muslims and British Muslims, and and he was basically saying, well, in America, we Muslims just move to the suburbs and we just, assimilate, but the British ones, well, they stay in their ghettos, and they stay more themselves because they are with each other in their ghettos in the inner cities,
Well, they
and
don't have. They're
keep
not
their
forced to.
identity, and that's how Jews keep their identity too,
I mean, a
by
lot of
staying in
Muslims.
ghettos and living with each other.
I mean, I think he's not. I mean, okay, I agree in that sense. Like, yeah, there's Muslim enclaves here in Europe, and you don't really find too much of that in. I mean, you're starting to have them now, but when you really had a lot of Muslim migration, with people just coming in, that type of stuff didn't exist. And so, yeah, you're right. You would find Muslims who were sprinkled out in different places. I wouldn't say I disagree. I don't know. Maybe it might be how it is where he's from in the Midwest, but Muslims weren't just living out in the suburbs here in California or the Bay Area. They were much they were very much living in the ghetto, and and whatnot. But they still didn't have no ethnic enclaves like you've seen here. Okay, yeah, you might have a block full of like in San Francisco, a Yemeni, like one Yemeni restaurant, an apartment that's full of Yemenis or whatever. But you know, it wasn't like the whole neighborhood, like a collection of blocks, like how you might see with Somalis in Mossad, or with certain parts of, or if you go to Oldham, how it's like basically divided of white English and South Asians. You know, something like that you wouldn't see. But I would say that uh, yeah, Muslims in the United States are forced to assimilate. They don't really have no choice. It's either or you just be by yourself because you're not going to have too many. I mean, I really even in the Bay Area, I don't remember like a whole lot of Muslims that I could. And then the Muslims that we did have were basically doing what the non-Muslims were doing. You know, whereas here,
Mm.
like I don't know, I don't want to say it's peer pressure, but you have a lot of people who look like you, think like you. You know, you
They
not.
know what you're supposed to be doing. But this is the whole point of this Jewish thing about you have to walk to you can't get into your car and drive to your synagogue. And this means that Jews have to live together in the same neighborhood
Yeah, right. Because
and
it's
be able
Saturdays.
to walk to synagogue. Yeah.
Because I remember
You
that. I
know,
remember going to my buddy's house in Seattle on Saturdays, and all the Jews be walking because he used to stay next to a Jewish community in Seattle, and yeah, he explained to me what was going on with them on that. At that time, I really didn't know because again, the Jews that I grew up with, like intimately,
yeah,
really.
they don't follow it because I remember Rabbi Mizrahi, practically tearing his hair out. And I went to the synagogue in California in LA, and what did they have? They had valet parking.
Uh,
What is happening? Valet parking at a
uh,
synagogue.
yeah, there was a synagogue in
It's a
my
bit like gay
neighborhood too.
marriage, isn't it?
Or it might have been a Jewish community center. I believe I want to say it was a synagogue though. I'm gonna check, but it was like right between, like midway between my house and the guy who makes the beats for the theme song, the theme music for my YouTube channel, Sebastian Seals, a friend of mine. He stayed like, yeah, the synagogue was like halfway between, our houses. We only stayed like maybe 4 or 5 blocks away from each other. So there was a Jewish synagogue. Again, there was Jewish people, but yeah, I just don't remember the Jews that I grew up with practicing like that, or caring. They recognized that they were Jews, and they had a certain affinity for the culture, but they weren't really practicing the religion like that.
Hmm.
And so, yeah, so in my opinion, like yeah, they break up these ethnic enclaves out here, but I don't think you can do it. Just something needs to happen in British society where you have these different groups of people mingling. There's a lot of ethnic tension in uh, British society, not just between whites and minorities, but even within certain minority groups. I've heard that the Somalis, when they first moved into Manchester, had a problem with the Caribbeans, and I can still see that there's a bit of resentment between the two communities. And then as well as the blacks and Asians and blacks of various kinds. You have Muslim blacks complaining about their co-religionists who were Asian, and then you have non-Muslim blacks and Asians going at it, as like what happened in it wasn't Ilford, but I was staying in Ilford, and it was somewhere in London where that Asian store owner choked that lady. Total incident was unrelated to race. The lady was
Hmm.
clearly giving the guy a hard time. Looks like she was being physical too, and the guy kind
Hmm.
of had enough and choked her like how Homer Simpson chokes Bart. Like that's how it looked to me.
As you would.
And
Yeah.
he was a big guy too, and it was like a
Mm.
little black lady. But and so it turned into a thing of racism and ethnic. because of other incidents that happened. I probably mentioned this on Steven's live stream, but because of other incidents that happened in the past, it just magnified this incident way past
Mhm.
what. Uh,
Yeah, the thing is, people are going to say, "Oh, you hit me, and you're racist because you hit me,"
or you felt
to
the
make it
liberty to
worse
do
than
it because
what
I
it
was
is.
black. It's easy for you to hit a black. I've heard all these
Yeah.
type of things, and I'm not just, and I'm not, again, I'm not the type of person when I mention these things to put a value judgment on it. I'm not saying is that's true or that's not true. Maybe it might be easier. Yeah, certain people are easier for me to hit than other people. I'm not saying those lines are divided along race, but yeah, there's I can understand there's people who you would hold back on, and then there's people who you just wouldn't hesitate. So and for some people it might be divided along race, who knows, so I'm not going to discount that, but I see how these things develop from, oh, the lady, dude thought the lady was stealing, lady might have been stealing, the lady felt like she wasn't stealing and she was being treated unjustly, and it that turns into something that really it wasn't, and according to a lot of the people talking about it now, which is what really happened. So yeah, man, the UK is interesting in that sense. It really, the ethnic tension is one of the things that they kind of need to get
It's a
under
law and order
control.
problem anyway, because if you make the rules clearer, then people will just know, where the boundaries are, and because nobody will confirm, how far you can or can't go, people will just keep, pushing the boundaries.
And what's up in the police too, man? One thing that Umar Lee did was really funny when we were out in London is he was talking to one of the bobbies out there, and he was like, you guys really need to do something about having guns. I know I've heard Brits always say, oh, well, you can't. The UK police doesn't. They don't need guns. The people don't have guns in order for them to. Yeah, yeah, okay, but I don't think people really take the police seriously out here, you know, like, and I'm not saying that they need to have more of a presence. I mean, compared to where I come from, which I consider to be a police state, where police are driving all on the streets and pulling you over left and right. It's almost a guaranteed chance that if they get behind you, they're gonna pull you over for some bullshit reason. I like the fact that you don't see a lot of cops like that out on the road, but at the same time, man, sometimes I was like, man, I really wish there was a cop to book this much to harass this motherfucker, man. Like,
Mhm,
especially homeless people who be sitting next to the ATM. Like that shit, I can't stand me. It like if there, I doubt that there's any
mhm.
homeless people listening to this, but I really want homeless people to know that with me, and I want to say, for one, it's improper in the United States for a homeless person to sit next to an ATM. You know what I'm saying? And think that he's gonna get something. And I just want to tell all the homeless people in the in the UK, I doubt that they're listening, but for anybody, like, look, you should not patronize these people. If they sit next to a flipping ATM thinking that they're gonna get something, I find that to be very aggressive panhandling in a very like sly way. You're not saying nothing to me, but you're basically sitting next to the ATM while I'm trying to take money out. You know what I'm saying? You're definitely not going to get anything from me if you do that. Now, if you were on the corner and walked up to me, didn't know how to pull my money out or whatever, and you asked, I might give you something. But if you're just gonna sit there, I wouldn't give you anything. And but yeah, I think the police. I really wish the police would actually do a little bit more in this society, because it's not as bad up north, but in London, it's really bad. Like, you can't turn your back, you can't leave anything anywhere without it being taken in like a matter of minutes.
Yeah. But words, names. I mean, going back to the subject of what people want to call themselves. Uh, it gets kind of, what's the word? Almost schizophrenic. Because what you were saying about the names of black people changing, and the police, and they have this thing called race codes. Did you know that? I see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5
Yeah, yeah, here it's all
genetic
confusing. It's
code.
like, yeah, I don't pay attention to. Remember when we used to go on
Well,
G
I
Block?
like the codes. I like the codes.
Really?
Because then because then it would be, oh, do I feel Japanese or Chinese? Do I look, or Mediterranean or Northern European? It's so crazy. It's like, well, you are whatever the two policemen can agree on, that you're, white or male or whatever. and that so nobody can argue about it. But if you want to know more, like, oh, really, where were you born? What religion are you? You know, it's like, okay, you can ask that person, but color should be pretty objective, right? Well,
Yeah, because
but apparently it isn't. It
when you
isn't.
get into that whole African Caribbean or black, like what's the difference when you're looking at me from your car window? You know what I'm saying? Like, uh, so in a sense, I agree, but I don't know. It seems like that can kind of backfire, like in the States, where you just have a general description of somebody, and you're just knocking harassing everybody who you think fits that. And then,
Okay, well, sort of tall, icy, 5 man wearing a red hat or
and
whatever,
then
because
they
I mean,
say that to you other races. I don't know. They say this to me. I think I can kind of tell the difference. But they say like when you see other people of a different race, they all look the same to you. You know what I'm saying? Like I've heard people jokingly say, I
mm,
don't know how true it is. Like, oh no, yeah, when all y'all look the same to me. Maybe it's not PC to say something like that nowadays, but that's always been a interesting joke. So if you got like two white cops, like oh, black male, tall, uh, damn man, that's a very general description. You can knock down a lot of people with
yeah,
that
but
one.
and then you just sort of increase it with wearing hat or jeans or whatever. Um,
Yeah, I mean, I don't think the British classifications are any better, to be honest. I think, yeah, I believe you should just try to be as specific as possible when it comes to
yeah,
identifying.
yeah. So if you use sort of numbers, people are not going to get, oh, you hurt my feelings. I'm not African. I'm, from the Caribbean or whatever it is that people, you know, choose to get offended about. And then I guess they'll say, oh, you can't reduce my identity to a mere number, you know. So, but this sort of not making up your mind about your name thing is actually a sign of neurosis, in my view. Um, so, well, forgive me for saying that I think black people might be a bit neurotic about, what to call themselves, but then so are the dissident right, who used to be called the alt-right, who
I mean,
used
I
to
don't
call
know how
themselves
much of a choice.
nationalists.
I don't know how much of a choice Black Americans have had in the matter. I mean, who gave us Negro? What were we would probably call the N word with the hard ER at the end before that. Before they probably, who knows what we were called before that. I don't think we really had a matter. And then when we probably had a chance to think about it, it was just really that. It wasn't like a whole bunch of name switching. It's just really been Negro, African American, Black, you know. Uh,
Hmm.
Now, if you
Yeah,
want
I
to,
don't remember. I don't know if you. There was a story about Benedict Cumberbatch, and he kind of used the wrong word. I think all he said was "colored gentleman," and everybody, screamed at him. How could he be so racist? It's like,
yeah, color,
no,
yeah,
I'm
color
just
doesn't
he's
some
obviously trying to be polite, but
color
he just used the
color
wrong
just
word,
doesn't
right?
sound color doesn't because color really doesn't sound right. I might look. I heard a English dude. He didn't mean it was an older English dude. He didn't mean anything by it, so I didn't check him on it, or I didn't say it. But it did.
If the
It
names
didn't
keep
sit right.
changing so often, how do you know what to use?
It didn't sound right. And another English dude. He's a white convert. I was hanging out with him at the masjid. And this was some years ago when I first moved here. He was actually shocked that I considered myself black. He was like, I thought, here that's like kind of offensive. I don't know who he's been hanging out with to tell him that. There are some Africans who feel like calling themselves black is offensive because it really doesn't say nothing about their identity. But from a Black American context, from within a Black American context, we definitely understand what being black is, like Black culture. Like it's something that you can identify. Whereas if you say Black culture in England, like what is that? You know what I'm saying? Um,
Mm.
Same thing with white culture. I think all these color terms really don't, or identities don't really work um, outside of the United States context. In many ways, don't even work within the United States when you try to get into like white culture because whites from different parts of Europe have constantly been assimilated into white identity. Um, they're the white identity and black identity are very different in some ways, in the sense that Black Americans are more homogenous. Um, very,
But I thought you were saying they weren't because there's this competition from the Afro-Caribbeans who are culturally different from the, you know,
Yeah, but
Is it in
they're still
the
fairly new. They're still fairly new. Okay, maybe the Afro Caribbeans have been in the states long before African migration, but I can't really think of like large numbers of Afro Caribbeans coming into the states in like the 1800s, or like you might have had some who have been from the mainland to the island, but that's really, I think, a product of the 20th century, where you really get, and it really wasn't even that many Caribbeans who were coming into the United States. It's more of, and then where Caribbeans are located is more so on the East Coast. We didn't have no we didn't have Caribbeans of any kind on the West Coast or in the South, and or nor in the Midwest. You would only really find them, and then I would say, yeah, we only in that East Coast New York area would you find a large part. And yes, Caribbeans do or did see, I don't know if they do now, but you can find a lot of Caribbeans on YouTube saying that they don't see themselves as black, see themselves as coming from the same culture as Black Americans. And Thomas Sowell has have pointed out, I have this on my YouTube channel, the Ethnic Flaw with Thomas Sowell, and being interviewed by Tony Brown, where he pointed out that Caribbeans on average do better than African Americans, and were on an increase as far as generational earnings were concerned. Like, I think they were moving up, like the next generation of Caribbeans were making 15% more than the generation before them, which is very different than what was going on with African Americans. So, and of course, he also pointed out that all people, even if they're of the same race, maybe similar cultures, do better. Who the people who get to the United States do better than the people who are already there. He pointed out the Chinese. He pointed out numerous other cultures that do better having moved to the United States than having been raised in the United States. So yeah, so there is competition in a sense,
and so
but
there is a cultural difference,
but
or
yeah,
some
yeah,
attitude
but
of mind.
yeah, but Jamaican Caribbeans, again, you might have some Caribbeans who bought into blackness, but they recognize that they are of a different, they recognize that even if they're in the States, recognize that they're of a different culture. Okay, so I'll give you the Caribbeans. They're a little bit complicated, because some of them are very much assimilated into Black American culture, having come from the Caribbeans. Their parents might be like Biggie Smalls. His parents were Caribbean.
Is he
But
some kind of rap
yeah,
artist?
yeah, yeah. He's a very famous rap artist. He died a long time ago, but very influential part of Black hip hop culture. And
Mhm.
nobody makes a big deal about his Caribbean roots, or say, nowadays, yeah, somebody might say, yeah, Biggie's not a Black American, or he's not Ado, or well, technically he is, because he's American descendant of slaves. I mean, it depends on how wide you want to cast the net of the Americas, but yeah, Caribbeans are complicated, but in the sense that Black Americans are more homogenous than, say, white Americans. You really know what Black American culture is, and how, and identifying, I don't want to say identifying, but you really know a Black American culture is something very much more distinct than, and easier to identify than, say, white culture. Like, what would you consider, like, because you'll have people who come, like, I've seen cowboys who have, one will have a Scottish ancestry, and he's up in the Oakland Hills on the weekend throwing logs, wearing a dress or wearing a kilt, doing the Scottish games. And then you'll have another cowboy, like I pointed out from my ex-wife on her father's side, who grandfather moved from the Kingdom of Bohemia to the United States, eating borscht, or making borscht, uh, and doing other things that demonstrate their I understand the Kingdom of Bohemia had a lot of different ethnicities, German, Slavic, or whatever, but doing other Slavic, like German cultural things. Like, so where is the white culture? You can't tell me that that what the Scottish dude that I pointed out, who I know personally, was doing, is from the same culture as what I seen these, and then what is it outside of that links these people besides the color of their skin? One
Mm.
one sometimes Scottish people have been in the United States for an extremely long time. You know what I'm saying? Going all the way back
It's not a
to,
predictor of outcome. It's not
yes,
a predictor, it's like, just because you're black doesn't mean, that there are, race is just one aspect of our identity. It's not, You just wouldn't be able to tell how somebody's going to behave on the basis of their race. You would have to, ask for further information such as sex and age and religion and, class. It's not enough.
I
But
agree. I
people
agree.
like, stupid, crude people like to think that they can tell just because of a person's race. They can tell, they can predict how how people are going to turn out. And a lot of stupid, crude people, uh, like you know, they want a story, and then they will behave as if it's true,
Mm.
and you can't shift them from that. As you were saying, yeah, just because somebody's bad doesn't mean they're going to be whatever. Because you have to take into consideration which country they were born in, what class they were, where they went to school, so many things.
Okay, and I'm saying
But
when
but
it
you
comes
you,
to
you know
white
you get these
Americans,
sort of stupid white nationalists who read The Lord of the Rings, which is just some children's stupid book that tells them, the elves or the hobbit or the whatever shit people, these people are. Oh, they're
are you
always
responding to
like
somebody's
this.
comment? I'm not looking at the comment section. It sounds like somebody said something that annoyed you, where you're speaking to someone.
No, I actually wasn't reading that comment,
Oh,
but
okay, okay. I
I
just
just want to make it clear that you know I understand the appeal of being able to say that person's is X color. That means he's my friend or enemy, because I'm Y color. You know, because it's like they can't think beyond that. They are stupid and crude, and they want to be able to think that just because somebody's a Jew, he's their enemy, and they and whatever bad thing that person, oh, it's because they're a Jew or
yeah.
whatever. And you can't really get them out because they want to think it's true. And that's why they make these crude conflations like race is nationality. And then you say, well, actually it's not. Race is what you're born with, and nationality you can acquire and lose, as you can acquire a passport or lose your
Exactly.
citizenship or something.
Exactly.
And it's like, but I wish. It's like, yeah, you can wish upon a star, but you're not going to get it. And so, unfortunately for these people, they are beyond reason. And the dissident right, show this kind of neurosis by changing their name. I mean, it's so stupid. Every time they change their name, it's the same old, it's the same old characters turning up. It doesn't matter what they change their name into. We know who it is and what they
I don't know.
stand.
This seems like the right here in the UK aren't really all that sophisticated. Seem like more like football hooligans. Um, and then I don't really see their kind of activism penetrating society. Like, okay, they might have some people who believe like they do, but people still go about life in this country like that rhetoric doesn't exist. Like, I just don't see that rhetoric affecting the way minorities go about their daily lives. I don't see anybody making a fuss. I've never heard anybody making a fuss about me being here in this country. If
Yeah,
and if these people do, they do it. So I'm basically saying, like, they don't really have the courage to
yeah. They don't say who they are. They use their avatar, and they change the avatar and they change their username, right? But that's another sign of schizophrenia as
because it's
well,
like they're
because
scared. They're scared of the very system that they want to change. You know what I'm saying? Like, I don't see enough of them saying, you know what, we're just gonna crash out. If you want to alienate us from society, from having these views, fuck it. We're just gonna be alienated, and we're gonna bring more people into this alienation. They don't have that mentality. You moment you find out who they are, and you start saying you're gonna lose your job, all these other things are gonna happen to you that don't really involve imprisonment, just alienation from the society. They get scared, and they don't want that to happen. You can't have that mentality. Black Americans definitely didn't have that mentality when they were fighting for change in society. They were out
they
there
had to
having
stand up and be
dogs.
counted using their real name. And these these losers, they don't get it. And also, using a fake avatar means that they will say stupid things that they will be ashamed of if it was actually tracked down to them. And so, in a way, it's still a trap. thinking that you can say anything because you're using a fake name or a
And then
fake.
also, I would like what we were talking about yesterday. The book that I'm going to be speaking with Umar Lee about, Lost Son. That guy was a freelance agent who got involved in within the ranks of terrorist organization and other Russian militia groups, and he was a FBI informant, getting involved with a freelance FBI informant. That that the FBI actually finds people who they think are savvy, who are involved in these kind of operations, and then they try to co-opt them to get information from other people. So you never know who you're like. I'm really me. You can look up Terron Poole. Many times I've had jobs here have information about me, on their website, that you can find out about me. I'm fucking 100% transparent. A lot of you guys aren't, or a lot of these people who espouse certain views, they're not transparent. And yeah, I think
And they're stupid, and that is the thing. And the thing is, it's not like they even want a cure for their disease. They just want to, talk shit,
yeah.
and then go away and come back and talk shit, and they don't really want anything to change.
I really think that's what they're satisfied with, to be honest. That's why I'm not really too bothered by some of the things
Mm.
I hear from them online. Because it's like, again,
They
man, I
can't
don't
they
see it
can't organize themselves to do anything because nobody would listen to them.
like
I
even
mean,
Tommy
that is the
Robinson.
bottom line.
Like even Tommy Robinson, he seems like he's able to gather a crowd, but he doesn't know what to do with that crowd. It seems like they just meet, yell, yeah, Tom, hey, Tom, whatever, and then they leave and go back to living their regular lives. And yeah, nothing in the society changed. When you have, I don't want to say aggressive immigrant population, but you really have a immigrant population who really don't give a fuck about their concerns. You know what I'm saying? Who don't care about, and it's like I don't know, man. I just think
Because
that
they know they were already invited in, and they know that whoever invited them in and gave them jobs want to protect their investment
mm,
against these losers who don't have jobs or whose jobs are, well, not secure.
mind you, you don't see, and this is a shocker to me, coming from the States where, I see homeless Black Americans all the time. You don't see any homeless minorities here. I don't even see homeless Caribbeans. There's one that
Mhm.
I can think of here in Manchester, but she has a mental illness, and people in the neighborhood or in the area kind of make sure she's straight. But all the homeless people I see are Brits. You know,
Yeah, they're
um,
white. Mm.
yeah, males of age who could actually, and then also you have a good amount of males who aren't working, you know, who can work. Um, and then you have immigrant population who, even if you put them in these temp agency jobs, they will work all the hours you give them. You can call them 2 hours before you need them; they'll show up. Uh, they don't have no problem. That's the Polish work extremely hard. And to be honest, like I don't know why they focus on MENA immigrants anyway. I don't see God bless Somalis. I don't see a bunch of Somalis really taking the jobs here in Manchester. I don't see a whole bunch of many other demographics taking jobs here in Manchester. If you really like, I see flipping the Polish people, Eastern European, the Romanian, other Slavic type people really taking the jobs out here. And then when they get in, they putting other people like them in. You know, but
Mm.
nobody, because you know what, man, you can't, because they really can't say nothing to these Polish people or these Eastern European people, man. They work their ass off. You know what I'm saying?
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
yeah, so that's why I pointed out to Steven, he didn't answer to it, but like, man, how come it seems like the only immigration you care about is from Black and brown countries, but these Eastern Europeans who equally don't get along with, you kind of never talk about that too much. Because when I like,
Yeah,
again, when I
I
worked at
remember. Mm.
I was just gonna
I
point out, when I
remember.
worked at Scott Precision, I was the only Black guy working there, and one half of my colleagues were from like Romania, Poland, Slovenia, or whatever, and then the other half were just like English British white guys, and they did not get along at all.
Mm. Yeah, years ago, when the BNP had a website that actually was an interesting one, one of the complaints was by these BNP supporters was that actually I don't have a problem with black people; they're not competing with me, but I do have a problem with these East Europeans who come here and take the bread out of our mouths.
Oh man,
So
they will.
yeah, I mean,
I No, I was just gonna say, man, they're hard workers, and then some, then you be fooled because I don't know, it's because some of them were raised here, so they have an English accent. You can't tell that they're Polish or whatnot
Mhm.
uh, until you hear their name. But yeah, man, they again, I don't hear nothing about that group of people.
Yeah.
And see, that's what makes me wonder, like, is it really racism? Like, if it's because immigrants are okay, fine, I get it, but let it be all immigrants because it's not just black and brown ones that are doing it to you. You know what I'm saying? And a lot of times, I don't want to say that, but I've never really came across a Polish person who couldn't speak English. You know what I'm saying?
Mhm.
Versus,
Mhm.
I've come across a good number of Africans and people from South Asia who really can't speak a lick of English and still working temp jobs because they have, enough people who can speak that language helping them basically.
Mm.
You know what I'm saying? To where you can kind of get by not knowing too much. You know what I'm saying? But anyway, yeah. So yeah, England's an interesting place. I still think it's a really good country. I think just there's a lot of exaggerating from the people, a lot of exaggerating and on what's really going on, and no like real solutions on how to like stimulate this society.
Well, I mean, that is the thing. The fraud of these anti-immigration parties is that they don't actually tell these people who don't like immigration what they need to do in order to stop it. They're just happy. It's like they sort of already know that these people are happy to blame Jews and hate on Muslims, and they just can't, encourage them. And instead of saying, well, actually, maybe you're not having enough children and not parenting them properly, or that they're not getting a good enough education, because a lot of these men who complain tend to be unmarriageable bachelors.
And it's crazy because when my wife was busy this past week because she was having a exam of her own. They were coming in to kind of check to make sure that she's doing her job properly. So I had to take the kids different places, different activities that she has planned for them throughout the week. And I was just surprised by how many Muslims I Muslims are there in the daytime with their children. Never really see, and mind you, I go to different parts of Manchester. Not like I'm just in a Muslim concentrated part, but everywhere I go, it's always Muslims with their children, having them do these activities throughout the summer, and sometimes like at a church, because contrary to what some Muslims like to say about the churches in the UK, the churches in the UK are still really vibrant. At least here in Manchester, where they have charities that are open 20 not 24 hours but in the daytime 5 days a week,
Mhm.
different
Mhm.
activities for children throughout the week, and other things that, because let's not forget that churches do function as charities as well, and I will say that the churches out here that function as charities are really active. Um, and so, yeah, I always see Muslims with their children, taking them certain places and doing activities. You don't see too many non-Muslims, and then when I come across a good non-Muslims with children, they tend to have had them like at a really later age. You know what I'm saying?
Mhm.
Like I'm talking about past
Older
40,
parents.
huh?
Mhm.
Yeah, like
Older
past.
parents.
Say it again.
Older parents.
Yeah, older parents. Yeah, like past 40.
Mm.
There was one guy who was really, when I was working at Left Bank Apartments. He was had the top. He was in the flat in the top floor, mind you. Left Bank. I mean, we there's a really famous soccer player that lives in Left Bank. I'm not going to expose because, but he's really famous. Uh,
Mhm.
and yeah, one dude who lived top floor. Uh, really, really well-to-do guy, man. He had his first child, because I remember talking to him when he was walking around with his child downstairs. Like, man, he had his first child like at 42, 43.
Mhm.
And I
Mhm.
don't think his wife was too much younger than him. She didn't look that
Mhm.
much younger than him. So I mean, yeah. So yeah, actually, if you read um any stats on this, the average, at least in the states, the average white person was having kids at a later age. And of course, you can blame that on education, career, all the things that will prolong you having a child. But I remember when I was working at a homes for students, the manager there, she was worried about if she was able would have a child or not. She was like 36 or 37, and she was like, oh, I spent all this time focusing on my career, my husband focusing on, and her husband was like a war camera or like an action cameraman for the BBC or something, so he was getting paid like, I don't know, we would joke and say he was getting paid like $1,000 an hour, but he was definitely getting paid a lot of money. But yeah, she was worried like that she focused so much on her education, so much on her career, that she's at a stage where she kind of really wants kids, and she didn't put too much thought into that aspect. And so she's worried that if she's able to have uh kids at that age. And I wonder, like, are people, I wonder if certain women become more infertile than other women, you know what I mean, like certain ethnicities, I mean, I don't, and I wonder this cold weather, maybe I'm getting into certain science that it really isn't real, but yeah, I don't know, it's interesting. In a sense, I think the non-Muslim population not needing to convert to Islam could actually learn something from could really actually, yeah, take something from Muslims in that sense.
Oh, well, I mean, the really, too full of hate. And I mean, the thing about Nick Griffin is that he has the greatest contempt for the people he presumes to represent. I mean, in the end, they expelled him from the party, and
But is it a
not
class
really.
thing though? Because I mean, I don't know who makes up a lot of the BNP, but like, were they? Is it the same class of people, or was Nick just kind of? Because I've also heard that's a problem. That guy who wrote the bell curve, he was giving a talk saying that, hey, us white folks in this class need to reach out to the white folks in the lower class, because there's a bit of a division between us, and it's not good. It's not going to work in our favor. Um, so was like that type of situation going on? Was it just like differences because of, uh, I don't know. I'll let you, like, why'd they kick him out?
Okay. Your question was, sorry.
Sorry,
I'll
maybe I did a lot of
concentrate. What
walking.
was your question?
Yeah, yeah. What was the problem? Why'd they kick him out?
They expelled him from the party because they thought he wasn't. Actually, I can't remember now. It was they were not happy with him, and he thought he was unexpellable. And then after he was expelled, he was saying critical things and
Okay, so what do you mean by he had
giving
contempt for the
advice.
people he was supposed to represent?
Well, he basically thought they were, the lowest of the low. They could barely read, and I suppose that explains why he wouldn't tell them anything that they didn't like to hear in case they turned on him.
Mm.
In a way, I guess I can understand that. So it's just easy to say, hate the Jews, hate the Muslims, keep on doing it, because I can't be bothered to explain things to you. And even if I did, you wouldn't get it. So there's no point. Um, so I mean, on and on it went. But the thing about Nick Griffin was that you know, he could pass from being prime ministerial, I suppose, because he went to Oxbridge. He did get a law degree. If he, um, I guess if you put him in a good suit, he could seem prime ministerial.
We about to see, man. I'm about to watch that Nick Griffin guy on Dilly Hussein. Somebody said, man, did blamed five pillars, and who else? There was some other person they blamed that really just ruined the public relations for Muslims in the UK.
Why? Because they spoke to Nick Griffin. I mean, I thought it was a
No,
good
no, not
thing they
because of
did.
that. Not because of just a series of things that who was it? It was Dilly Hussein and somebody else that.
Roshan Saleh, that one.
Nah, it was, well, it was five pillars involves both of them, so they just blamed five pillars, and it was somebody else who they. Oh, let me look, because I tagged Ghazal in this. To be honest, I'll tell you who the other person is. Let me see. Damn, I got 13 notifications. My shit been cracking since I was. All right, so what did the person say? Let's see. He was responding to, oh, that Aisha girl. That Aisha girl. There was a girl. There's a woman on Twitter who just be saying a whole bunch of stuff, wild stuff. Oh, you're on. This is all from you. Oh, you tagged Nick Griffin in. Is this the same Nick Griffin?
Yeah, yeah, that's the one. So basically, after he was expelled, he just went around, doom mongering, and that's all he's been doing, doom mongering. I remember he was invited to someone's channel, and you know, and he just keeps saying this thing like you have to move to the country and have lots of children, and you have to move to Eastern Europe. And I thought, oh, um, is that it? Is that all you can say? Then you should just shut up if that's all you can say.
So he
Oh,
basically recommended white
get off
flight.
it and be Christian.
So he basically recommended white flight and
Yeah, you
going
work
back to.
and just say, have more of the poison that doesn't work.
I mean, dude, I don't see anything changing in this. I'm gonna be honest. Like, I don't see anything changing in this country. I think this country is moving in a direction that the country might be unrecognizable in the
It's a
next 100
headless
years.
corpse. That's what it is. It's a headless corpse,
Yeah, I
and
think it's too
nobody
late in the
actually
game
wants to
for them to
say
care.
anything
They would really have
in
to.
case they get criticized for suggesting a solution.
Yeah, and I think any solution at this point would have to be extremely radical. To be honest, like if I'm honest with it, you would have to like because nobody's scared of these people. People look at them like a joke. Like the minorities do. No minorities are shaking. Only thing that I'm worried about because I have girl children, a wife. Any of these dudes try to do anything crazy out in public one day and they end up getting the. That's what I'm worried about. But for myself, I don't feel threatened by these people as a minority living in, again, they don't show their faces. I don't know who they are, if they're enemies or they're the weakest enemies I have in this country. If they can't make me feel the weight of their hatred for immigrants in this country, like then your racism or your nationalism sucks. You know what I'm saying? Because
You,
yeah,
you
man,
know
it's
what
like,
I can't stand about them? It's like, well, how about using ideas? How about rehabilitating the idea of nationalism? How about we define it as government in the national interest? It's just this little thing. It's like, because we don't want to be associated with fascism and Nazism and, all the failed isms of the last century. It's like,
mm.
how about that? And they can't even talk about that. They actually can't. They can't discuss any ideas. Okay, but to be fair to them, that they're not they're not the most educated people. But some of them have been to a good university, but they just can't talk about ideas. It's very strange.
Mm.
Because I think, what once you can define government and nationalism as government in the national interest, then you can say, well, it's what everyone living under a government is entitled to feel that their government is governing in a national interest. Because
And it's
this
not
is
race
what Trump
based,
was saying. I'm a nationalist. And I'm
and it's
obviously
not.
not racist because look at my black supporters, look at my Hispanic supporters. But he wasn't allowed to make that point because the liberal media ganged up against him.
Yeah, but they flip. But the liberals talk like that too. Like, look at my black people, and or like look at or not. Trump said something like that. Trump was cool, man. I really I miss Trump, man. I really do hope he come back, man. The United States was the world was a way more interesting place when Trump was in office. I'll tell you that much. You
Can
know,
you vote for him? Can you
I don't
vote for
know.
him?
I don't know.
I mean, what will you think about
I did in
showing the
I didn't
paperwork?
this last election, but I did when he got elected in. I did that time I
Oh,
voted.
good. Oh, good. I mean, I think the least British people can do is encourage Americans to vote Trump, and I'm doing my bit.
He was, man, every time Republicans are in office, man, I'm winning. When I really look at the George Bush years, okay, I can't speak for the rest of the country, but I was doing cool when George Bush was in office. The okay, 4 years of that was in high school because what he came in 2000, so re-election 2004. I graduated 2005. The man, those 3 years out after high school, man, I was rolling. And then they always say the last president, what he does carries over a little bit into the term of the next president. Those couple of years into Obama's, man, I was high on a hill, though. And then same thing when Obama came into office after like 2010, man, it was a struggle. 2008 was, 2008 definitely was hard for a lot of people. 2009, 10 was a struggle. The Obama years, man, were rough when I really think about it. And uh, then when Trump came back into office, man, I was rolling. I was back on rolling, man. 2016, that was prime. 2018 when I moved to the UK, but leading up to 2018, and again, you could probably say this was carryover from Obama years, 2008 to 2016, maybe. But the economy seemed to be on the up and up. I want to say that the housing market was doing pretty well. It seems like a lot of people were recovering from what happened in 2008, depending on what happened to you, and so. Yeah, now I don't know, man. Left wing, right wing, same dirty bird. To be honest, could be the case. Never know. But yeah, when
Which
Republicans
is
are in office,
why
I
we
seem to
should
be
have
doing
a
better.
one-party state, all of us. Because, the left-right distinction actually it doesn't even make sense. I mean, what is left and right anyway? Left is sort of feminist, right is conservative. Is that it?
Yeah,
I
but I'm starting
actually
to see
find
more. I'm
classification.
starting to see more
Hmm?
discussion between the two, though. I mean, at least within American politics, I'm starting to see more of the two sitting down and talking about things. It seems like yeah, I don't know. Claire, I'm not really the most politically astute person. I don't really I'm probably I really don't focus too much on politics because I
Mm.
don't think it's a bunch of bullshit, but I think it's it can be a real Mickey Mouse show sometimes.
Well,
Um
all I'm saying is that the system is not working. That's why it's breaking down, and it affects all of us. Because I guess all my life, I see problems and I think, oh, why don't they do this? Why don't they do that? And then, there are all kinds of bullshit reasons that are given about why the obvious solution is not being done. And it's all to do with, denial, corruption, ignoring the truth, not caring if any, not caring about certain people. It's basically about that.
and see, this is where I think you're in your bag, or where you're like really in your element, or like this is like I think what you're really good at speaking about and convincing people. It's just that when you start talking about secular Quranism, I think that's when you like lose. And I'm not saying you're wrong for secular Quranism, but just that I think you got really good ideas about society or how it's supposed to be ran, or at least pointing
Well,
out some of its failures. But yeah, man, I don't know. You
they don't like my prescribed cure. I can understand that. I don't even have to mention it. I mean, you're the person
you
who mentioned it first. But it's like,
you
yeah, they run away because they don't want to hear about the cure.
that
And
might be the
there is
case.
no one to take charge. That is the problem too. There's no one to say, well, it's up to me. I can decide whether to adopt it or not. There is no one. All
Who
the
is it
way
who
up
pointed
to
this out?
the leader of the world's number one superpower. There's nobody really in charge. Biden's not really in charge, is he?
Nah, he's a flipping decrepit president, man. They need to get him out of office. That's a shame how they're doing that old man. He needs to be somewhere enjoying the last bit of his life, just chilling. But they got him doing all of these things, and he's probably not even aware. It's really sad, man. I don't even know why they want these older gentlemen as president anyway in the United States, like upwards 80 years old. Like, come on, man, we can do a little bit better than that. We need somebody with some energy who can kind of like motivate the American people. These not the Trump was really good. Trump's really good for his age, but I'm just saying, like, we need to stop these older men as president. But what about the UK? Look at the leadership in the UK. I mean, I don't understand you guys' political party or whatever, but
Well, they're just figureheads. That they're here today and gone tomorrow. They're like people queuing outside a public convenience. Soon they'll be gone, and the policies will remain the same, which is to submit to neoconservatism and neoliberalism, because that is what European leaders do. And it's becoming increasingly clear that
Mm.
that's all they, and the way America controls us is through representative democracy. Did you ever watch Black Panther? I thought you might, since you're black, you might have watched it. You
No,
didn't.
I didn't watch that shit. I've never seen that movie in my
Okay,
life.
well, I mean, one thing that's interesting about it is there is a running joke being repeated by the only white actor who
What are
is
you
the
saying?
CIA agent. And he didn't just say it once, he said it twice. You know, we control the world through controlling their elections.
Oh,
Meaning that they're all rigged, in Africa or just anywhere.
that's probably why they think Jews control the world because they play both sides of the political parties. You know what I'm saying? Which isn't a dumb move. I mean, blacks get talk shit about all the time for putting all their eggs in the Democratic basket. You know what I'm saying? So yeah, it's not too unwise to play both sides like that. But
Mm.
yeah, no, I never seen Black Panther, and yeah, doing that, controlling the political parties, yeah, controlling the elections. Yeah, I mean, I don't want to say controlling the elections. That's a little bit dubious, but
The
yeah,
color revolution and all that.
controlling the political parties. Yeah, I can see that, or having the political parties really feel like they need you. I'll be interested to see what happens with the Biden campaign and the Muslims ditching him because of his which I pointed out to that thinking Muslim gentleman just from within the UK because he's doing something similar with UK politicians and their foreign policy and their stance on Israel or whatever. Like, I just don't think it's a good look for Muslims to only complain about these people when it involves something that has nothing to do with the countries they live in. Like these presidents, these politicians have been messing up for a long time. Biden, what's been going on in the UK, and it's now that
Mm.
you decide to, because of their position on Palestine, it's now that you decide to kick up dust about how shit politicians they are and they need to be replaced or removed or whatnot. So, I think that's not a good look, and I've heard certain commentators point that out amongst Muslims. Like, look, okay, fine, anything to get you not to vote for Biden, that's cool. I'm down with that. But it's very interesting that this is the time when you decide to ditch him, not of any of the things he was doing beforehand. Mind you, I don't know if he was doing anything negative. I'm just repeating what this person was saying. Um, but not never mind that he was doing anything that was messing up the country, really setting people back in the United States. Never mind all that. This is when you decide to say, hey, we've had, this, enough is enough. Like, nah, it kind of should have been way before this. And it just kind of, for some people, confirm the fact that some of these immigrants aren't really invested in the countries they come in. Okay, you sent a link. The countries that they're moving to, like they should. And I'm not saying that they don't. I'm not saying that's indicative of it, but it does kind of make it seem like that when you only speak out against things that are happening in a foreign country because you share the same religion as these people, rather than
Mm.
thinking about what goes on in the country or kicking up dust when um, these people fail in policies that involve the country you live in.
Yeah, I suppose, this is the nature of religion. The Ummah cares about the Palestinians. They are united in their hatred of Jews, I guess, you know,
Yeah,
because
but the Muslim countries don't feel like that. Like the Muslim countries are like there is no ummah. Like religion is not the highest item on the totem pole when you see how Muslim majority countries are ran. You know, politics rules the day. I mean, I brought it up yesterday. You look at Pakistan. They won't say nothing. That the government won't say nothing about the what the Chinese are doing to the Uyghurs. Versus what the average Muslim that you'll find online is saying or believes about what China's. You have Imran Khan, who a lot of Pakistanis celebrate. Say, "Oh no, I don't think what's going on with the Uyghurs is exactly what." Basically downplaying it because China, they say is propping up. the country of Pakistan. So, and then all these other, geopolitics is what really rules the day, not religion. If you or what really moves the pieces on the chessboard, not religion so much. I mean, if it's useful, these people will use it in order to galvanize their uh, population or other people to get behind them. But yeah,
Well, no,
man,
that is the thing. You have all these Muslims who live in their so-called Muslim countries, but they don't follow the rules. Well, I mean that's a problem, isn't it? I mean,
well, I think
we
the people follow. I think the people do, and
I
some.
think the ruling classes need to follow
Yeah,
it.
yeah, that I was about to say. The one guy who stays in the UAE had told me like, yeah, they give us this traditional religion, and then and then for themselves is liberalism.
Yeah, because they don't really think, most people don't, it's more than my job's worth to, ask a few questions.
Mm,
And what is so sad about it is that actually, if enough people ask the same questions as I ask, a lot of things could change. I mean, I think I've explained things reasonably well, you know, and if you can reduce your political activism in asking a few questions that everybody can remember, that doesn't mean, giving talks and making speeches. You can get your point through
yeah,
until
definitely.
you. In the end, there's only, you know, uh, there's only words if you want to do it, but legally and peacefully. And and the least you can do is ask the obvious question, which a lot of people don't see able to do. Maybe they're too scared. Maybe it's a hangover from their Christianity, when they could be burnt at the stake for asking too many questions about the Trinity,
Yeah, maybe
because
post
heretic
Christian.
burning was a Christian practice.
Yeah,
They don't
post
understand
Christian
their own
disorder.
history.
Yeah, I believe it. Post Christianity disorder. I've seen it. I've talked to some of these Brits, these Europeans, and how they feel like they really get. Some of them really get upset about Christianity when the topic of religion comes up. But see, the Europeans aren't ignorant about religion. I could tell, like it's just because some of them have had a hard time, and but at one point they really bought into it. I come across a lot of people when the topic of religion comes up, they kind of like I can't like they used to this they used to oppress people in this country over this religious stuff, and people used to fight for decades over this shit. And even up until recently, wasn't it still like a big thing between Protestants and Catholics? In the black community, different denominations of Christianity really don't beef like that. So um, it's only
Yeah,
since
I don't think they understand their own history. I mean, that's the problem. It's like, because you know Christian nationalism is a topic that keeps trending on Twitter. So obviously, the social conservatism in America are probably asking themselves, well, why can't we go back to what it was in a time of our grandparents, etc. And it's like, well, there is a reason, but you don't seem to know it. It would be profoundly un-American to remove the separation of church and state.
mm,
And there was a reason why the founding fathers separate the church from their state, and it's because Christianity supported monarchy, and the thing is, Christianity failed to protect Christendom, and Christendom just means a Europe of Christian kingdoms, because they all went last century, didn't they? You know,
mm,
the Kaiser had to abdicate after World War II, or after World War One. Um, the monarchy in Spain, wobbled. Obviously the French Revolution before that was sort of pretty violent, ending in regicide, and the Russian Revolution ended up in the whole royal family being exterminated. It's sort of, they don't get it. It's like, and what was liberalism but a replacement of Christianity? What was communism but an attempt to replace monarchy? And also,
yeah, I'm seeing the same. You're making it sound
was
like
Italy
Christianity
Germany?
fell with the European monarchs.
I'm sorry.
It sounds like you're saying Christianity fell with the European monarchs, that its mistake was attaching itself to power. When that power toppled, so
Well,
did religion.
I mean, okay. This is my understanding of European history. Rome Christianized in the fourth century because the Roman imperial religion was failing. And obviously Constantine the Great, the one who, prepared the ground to Christianize Rome, knew that, Christianity, seemed to be the only thing around, and he was going to go with it. And he called the Council of Nicaea to get them to agree to Christian doctrine and, that sort of thing. And obviously, the rest of Europe was just full of, barbarian kings who were, warlords.
mm,
Basically, they were good at fighting, but they were basically illiterate,
mm,
you know. And then and obviously, when the Christian missionaries, were sent from Rome to say, you know, hey king, this is, the church of your former conquerors, the Romans. Wouldn't you like a bit of that Roman glamour? You haven't got anything better, and we know all kinds of shit because we're such an ancient empire. We'll send one of our people to, help you run your kingdom. How about it?
mm.
I mean, that was the bargain. And then, obviously the kings had to obey the Pope until they couldn't stand it anymore. After a few generations of learning Greek and Latin and, becoming literate and having a few ideas of their own, they thought, well, we don't need to listen to you, Pope. We just know you're, a mortal, fallible politician
Right.
like us. It's like they don't get it. They don't get it. It's some sort of, kind of weird fight between, Catholics and Protestants. And then, basically Henry VIII said, I'm going to be my own pope, but I'll appoint an Archbishop of Canterbury, to make it look good because,
Mm,
there is some, idea of separation of um, the powers. So the priest cannot also be the king.
mm,
As you may know from the Hasmonean dynasty, which is a Jewish thing. But
yeah.
anyway, it didn't turn out well for the Hasmoneans because they didn't separate the king from the priest because it was the same person. And basically, it's like the Jews, they had really bad kings. The only decent king they had was King Solomon. But, after he died, his kingdom separated into two because
Mm.
his son was no good. Maybe he spent too much time with his concubines and his wives, but basically, the Jews had terrible kings. And
And the Quran said, and they begged for a king too. And what you find in the Quran, they wanted one, and it was
yeah,
recommended
yeah,
that they get one. And I swear,
yeah,
these same cries that the Jews had, or the Israelites had in the Quran about having a king, sounds a lot like Muslims when it comes to having a caliph.
yeah, and the Muslims don't quite get it that the caliph is not a king. Because the rightly guided caliphs were not related to each other.
No, they're not. It was only. I mean, a lot of Sunni political thought follows the model of the Abbasids and the uh, and the Umayyads. So, but yeah, you're right. They weren't. Well, in a sense, they were related to each other. You could say that Muhammad was the father. The Abu Bakr was the father-in-law of Muhammad. So was Umar. Then Uthman was the son-in-law. So was Ali, was his son-in-law slash cousin. And then but to all of these people were related in some kind of way because it was a tribal system set up.
But
But
they
yeah,
weren't
you're
sort
right.
of, oh, he's my
It wasn't
son.
what
And
patrilineal. It wasn't
yeah.
patrilineal in that
Yeah,
sense.
yeah. I mean, okay. Yeah, I mean, of course, there would be some kind of family alliance, but it wasn't like you're my son, so I bequeath my
Yeah.
position to you, and that sort, the
Although they
kind of
say Ali,
feudal
I mean,
succession thing.
historically, one of the rightly guided caliphs was going to do that. I mean, he was going to make one of his sons. Uh, Ali was going to make one of his sons the caliph after him. Um, but it didn't. And I think Muawiyah wrested the position of caliph from him, and
Hmm.
then Muawiyah passed it on to his son. Like 4 years before Muawiyah died, or something like that, he had nominated his son for caliph.
Hmm.
And so he kind of introduced, and well, if you read the history books, they say that he introduced it, but I've never seen. It's only been a Western scholar who kind of pointed out that Ali was trying to introduce patrilineal caliphate rulership as well. It's just that
Which is basically turning it into a monarchy, yes?
monarchy. And even yeah, I think even Ibn Khaldun pointed it out as well that the real caliphate only existed with the Rashidun. That after Ali, it turned into kingdoms.
Monarchy.
Yeah, monarchy.
Yeah. And the whole logic of Sharia is that, it goes back to the Book of Kings, because once upon a time, the golden age of Judaism was when, the judges, in the times of the judges, they just went up and down is, the ancient kingdom, sorry, ancient Israel, giving justice. And until one of them thought, oh, it's so cool how the Gentiles have a king. We want one too. And God in the Book of Samuel kind of said, are you sure? And they
I
kind of
mean,
said,
and
yeah.
that's how the Islamic Empire was ran in many respects. That the religious scholarship acted apart from the ruler. I mean, of course, there were some government scholars, but like jurisdiction or jurisprudence for a certain area was more so related to certain figures in that community, not necessarily the caliph himself, if that makes sense. It seems like there was more like communal governance, as well as overarching caliph who was running the empire. But within certain communities you have figures who were pretty much running things, and and the caliph pretty kind of didn't interfere too intimately with what certain communities were doing. So um
Mm.
yeah, so
Yeah,
I mean
but he was the sort of supreme leader of Muslims all over the world. I mean, there could only be one caliph at a time, right? That there would be no,
allegedly.
you know. So I'm imagining that a caliph would be voted in by the emirs, right? Emirates. I mean, I guess an emir would be in charge of an emirate.
I mean, it's supposed to be. That's how the theory of the Caliphate. I think if you read Al Mawardi, he wrote that really good book, The Ordinance of Governance. I can't remember the Arabic name, but it's the Ordinance of Governance in English. Yeah, he said Caliphate is position of caliph is by election. And he tries to draw from history, um,
Mhm.
saying that okay, look, oh, okay, well, you really can't say Abu Bakr. Well, yeah, Abu Bakr was nominated. Then they say Umar was nominated, but then academic scholarship has kind of questioned if Abu Bakr was really nominated, and even Shias might also agree that Umar and Abu Bakr conspired um, for Abu Bakr to become caliph after. I mean, and I've heard it explained to where their intentions weren't like malicious for doing it, or they weren't trying to be sneaky, but just to kind of take control over the thing before which if we know from tradition, certain inquiries about who's supposed to lead the community next did pop up, and so I do see that could happen like that, but and then they also say that Umar kind of even before Abu Bakr died, like Umar was kind of running the show, and that things kind of just and that and so some people have questioned, and then definitely when you get into the Umayyad, the Abbasid, things didn't always pass. You don't see any like elections of people. I mean, even though things were supposed to be patrilineal, I can't really say for the Umayyads, but definitely for the Abbasids, things didn't always pass from father to son. Someone may have got killed, and then it went to a different family member. So yeah, this whole idea of election of caliphate really didn't play out in history, to be honest. If you look at
Well,
the
I sort of think that China is probably closer to the sort of nomination thing than any Muslim country, because they're all kingdoms, aren't they? Many of the Gulf states are basically monarchies,
yeah.
and so if you're a monarchy, there will be an order of succession. So if you're the king, and you die, it will go to your son, and if you don't have your son, it'll go to, I don't know, your nephew or your brother,
Yes.
or whatever it is. That's how it goes. um and but for China, there is a kind of hierarchy. I mean, there is a party hierarchy, and at the top there's, I think, only 7 to 8 members, and below that I think 21 members, etc., and then more members, closer to the bottom, um, and therefore, should anything happen to Xi Jinping, I'm sure they could just produce a leader
from
by
that group.
24 hours.
Yeah, and that sounds a lot like how the caliphate election, the caliphate election is supposed to happen, where you have a group of the prominent figures in the community. They vote, and I want to say that from that same pool of people who are able to vote and represent their communities, if anything was to happen to the caliph, it should be somebody who's also of great importance, that the community would rally behind. All these certain
Yeah, the
qualities.
idea of a peaceful transfer of power,
Yeah,
not people
which has
saying, who made him
barely
the
happened
boss?
in Islamic history, which has barely happened in this. So, a lot of this stuff is just theory, but that's not to say that it won't work. I mean, just because
Yeah,
the
yeah, because I mean, we know what happened to the Moguls. I mean, basically, they completely broke the four wives max rule. So every time the king died, there would be so many, because the king would have a harem, there would be so many sons, and the sons all had to kill each other in order to
yeah,
become
the
king.
Ottomans did that.
Yeah,
The
yeah. So
not infanticide. What is it called though? Not sibling.
fratricide.
Yeah, fratricide. Yeah, the Ottomans engaged in that practice because I think at one point early on in their empire, they were engaged in a civil war. I want to say like two brothers were fighting, but then also the enemies of the Ottomans had co-opted a third brother and was trying to use him uh,
Hmm.
to get in the mix as well. And so
Hmm.
I think after that they ended that to where like now we're about to get rid of. And then also like what you mentioned, I don't know if this was I haven't really looked too much into the Mughals, but I know for the Ottomans case that the women of the harem were pretty powerful and had leverage over their sons,
Hmm.
and many times tried to push them to you know obtain certain. I know that's the case in the Abbasids. I can't think of anyone off the top of my head for the Ottomans, but definitely for the
Hmm.
Abbasids, they some of the wives of the caliph tried to have their
Hmm.
child
Hmm.
rise to the position of caliph. So
Hmm.
yeah, it's very interesting. Islamic history is very interesting in that sense. You see a lot of stuff that really makes you wonder. Like, do we really
Yeah,
want?
but I mean, the thing is, it's so easy to say that they didn't. The reasons, I mean, okay, the reason why there isn't a caliph now is because obviously the Muslims didn't follow their own rules. I mean, I'm not saying, I'm so perfect that I never break my own rules. I mean, it's quite tempting every now and then, but it never works out well. But the point is that, if you have a set of rules and you break them, you think, okay, I better not break them again. But it doesn't mean that the rules don't work. It just meant that you didn't follow them, and if you did follow them, things would turn out better for you. And that the meaning of words is so important because it does matter a lot if that the caliph is not a king,
Mm,
because it's only when it's universally accepted that the caliph cannot be a king that Islamic governance for Muslims would improve. But really, that there's so much pick and mix in um any Muslim country that I just don't see how it would work, because I mean the whole principle of the caliph is that the idea that you don't have a monarch is because you want the next national leader to be the best person in the country, not
right,
just the best person in your family, and maybe maybe your sons aren't the best your only son is not the best person to run the country, kind of thing.
right.
And
That's what the Ibadi understanding of the imamate or caliphate, if you will. That's how it's more on a meritocracy, not on a. I mean, even though the Sunni theory involves election, it's not patrilineal. They don't espouse that view. Um, I don't know. That's still
yeah,
kind of how.
this thing you
But then,
call nomination is a process called nomination.
Ibadi history, it didn't. Their theory of the imamate didn't always play out uh, in history how it should have. So, you really kind of can't, what people write in books and then how these things happen actually on the ground, or it can be two different things. When you actually even read Al Mawardi's work, right? So you'll have that work, and it talks about like all these beautiful things about the caliphate and how it's supposed to run and elect its officials and all this other type of stuff. But at the time he was writing it, none of that shit was going on as far as the caliphate. The caliph was a puppet. He was being controlled by what the Buyids. The Buyids were a Shi'i dynasty, and man, they were basically what you had Shias running the Sunni caliphate. And so while Mawardi was writing all these beautiful things about how the caliph is established and how it's supposed to function and the qualifications and all this other type of stuff, none of that stuff was how things were happening in the caliph of his time. It was actually the lowest point. And so, I mean, I guess that's why it probably prompted him to write that book. But yeah, so in Islam you kind of have to compare some of these texts up against what was really happening on the ground in society, because sometimes you'll see and then sometimes you get a glimpse of like what was going on. Okay, so like with Ibn Taymiyyah's Al-Aqeedah Wasatiyah, when you actually read the preface, it's him responding to someone who's coming from a region where he feels that the average Muslim doesn't know anything about his religion. So Ibn Taymiyyah writes a very simple treatise detailing the basic things that you're supposed to believe in as a Muslim. From that, you can kind of understand that there were certain Muslims who really kind of didn't understand their religion. But then the way Al-Aqeedah Wasatiyah and there's other treaties that he written, the way they're pushed off to Muslims, like, no, you have to know this. You're not a Muslim if you don't know this. But it seems like people at that time didn't have a really good understanding of this either. How widespread was it? Where even to me, it felt prompted to write something to kind of educate people. So yeah, I don't. Maybe I was waffling on a lot about that. But on that note, I'm actually going to get out of here because there's some things I'm trying to do before I go to bed.
Okay.
But it was
Well,
nice
thank
talking
you
to you.
for a very interesting conversation.
Yeah, it was cool. It
I
was
didn't
pretty chill.
know it would go that way.
Why? What did you think was going to happen?
I don't know. I mean, I suppose it's always so unexpected that we would be talking about things um, um, that I wasn't expecting, which is nice, I think.
Yeah, it's cool. It's cool. I really wasn't too motivated to do a live. I actually get what you're saying because when you asked me if I wanted to live stream, I really wasn't like thinking about it too much or like motivated to do so. Or I probably wouldn't have inquired about doing so if you hadn't have brought it up. And I was a bit reluctant, like, I really don't feel like I have anything to say. I'm just chilling right now. I kind of got a headache. Um, Forget it. Why not? And so, yeah, I actually said I was only going to give myself like 30 minutes, an hour. It really went way past that. So, yeah, I think it went a lot better than I thought too.
Yes. All right, then have a good rest. I hope your headache has cleared up.
Yeah, I probably just need to
Um,
drink some water or something, eat a banana, and
yeah.
I'll be all right.
Okay.
All right,
All
Claire.
right.
Talk to you in a
Good
bit. If I can
night.
just find where this thing is located so I can exit out. I'm looking
At the
at Twitter right
bottom,
now. Oh yeah.
leave studio.
So I really have like 20 windows open on my laptop. That's why I can't. And you know how when you have so many windows open, like all it shows is like a little bit of and I have to like recognize it by icon, but I got like 4 different YouTube windows open, 3 Twitter windows open. And so yeah,
Yes.
okay, I found where I'm at now. All right. Well,
Okay.
I'll talk to you later. Take it easy. Bye.
Okay. Take care. Thanks for coming. Bye.